This is KC Sports Tonight.
Welcome, everybody, to the Memorial Day edition of KC Sports Tonight. Scott Reiss here in our KCTV5 newsroom. Marleah, Campbell at a very loud Cable Dahmer Arena where the KC Mavs are one period away from their first ever trip to the Kelly Cup Finals. Marleah, I'll let you set the scene for us. It sounds like a great crowd out there.
Listening into them, and so it's been a great experience. And Scott, I'll tell you what too, I already signed a waiver because we're going on the ice assuming they win for the celebration after this. Signed a waiver, so when you slip and fall on the ice, we'll be good to go there. But yeah, great atmosphere, good time, and Scott, I know you're a little bit more familiar with going to big games like this in person.
I am. So I was the pre- and post-game host for the San Jose Sharks for 5 years out in the Bay Area. So I've seen a lot of hockey. I have seen a lot of really high-level playoff hockey. They went to the Stanley Cup Finals one year when I was covering them. And even if you are not a big hockey fan, I'm telling you, you need to appreciate the coolness factor of playoff hockey, especially in person, because every goal matters so much. You know, it's not like, playoff NFL games are great and we all know the intensity, but they're going to score a lot of points over the course of the game. Playoff NBA, same thing. They're scoring 100 points a side. Hockey, you get these games that are 1-0, 2-1. I mean, the entire season can come down to one goal, and sometimes that puck hits the post and goes off, and sometimes, I mean, just you talk about an entire season resting on a matter of inches and all the intensity that goes with that. So I think it's a fantastic atmosphere, and I'm sure you're getting to experience that here firsthand. You know, part of the other reason I appreciated hockey so much is because, like you allude to, like I can't imagine doing what these guys do. You know, I was not a Division I athlete. I wasn't a D1 athlete like you were, but I can catch a football and I can shoot a basketball and I can hit a baseball, but I cannot even begin to approximate what these guys are doing with the stick and the puck, let alone you add in the ice and the skating. It's mind-boggling. The speed and the physicality of the game. It's really remarkable to see what these guys do. And again, seeing it in person is super cool. So I'm glad you're getting to experience it. Yeah, go ahead. and you get to witness a champagne celebration, and that's going to be a ton of fun. And if you have any concerns about falling on the ice, please make sure that Kimo, your videographer, is rolling the entire time, because if that happens, we need to see it. Yes, yes. Never stop the camera.
Brought my tennis shoes with the least amount of tread. So we're in good shape for that to happen.
All right, let's move on to a game that unfortunately you did not get to witness, or maybe fortunately. Royals Twins this afternoon. This is a big series. 4 games against a Minnesota team that was the preseason favorite to win the American League Central. And entering this series, lo and behold, the Royals were 5 full games up on Minnesota, which means if you can even split this thing, if you can go 2-2 on the road and leave town still 5 games up on the Twins, that's a really nice cushion to have over the team that everybody expected, and maybe some still expect to ultimately win the AL Central. Didn't start out well today. Joe Ryan, who just obliterates the Twins. In fact, the numbers on Joe Ryan, I'll get back to in a second, but it's really remarkable. He shut him down for 7 innings. It was 6-1 go to the 9th, and the Royals scratched and clawed, and they got a run on a Hunter Renfroe double, and then they got a couple of walks, and they got an infield single and a throwing error, and all of a sudden, it's 6-5 with runners on second and third, 2 outs, and Bobby Witt Jr. at the plate, and you're like, well, you know, here it is, right? This is the one, if you're going to ask for a chance, this is it, a Bobby Witt single, and we're leading 7-6. And he swings at the first pitch and taps it back to the pitcher, and it was like buzzkill big time, and they lost 6-5. So that's what you missed. So bear with me for just a second, Marleah. I'm restarting streams on Facebook and YouTube. I think I've got that. We had a little glitch about 3 minutes into the stream here, and I didn't realize it apparently knocked us off those 2 platforms, but I think I've got us back. So we're doing our best here. I think we're back on both. So you're back up for the world to see, and you didn't even know it. Also, one more. Again, let me remind you on air what I asked you off air, which is so much ambient noise there. Make sure to hold the mic like right up to your mouth, because it is tough to hear you with, what is it, 8? That's much better, by the way. Was it 8,000 fans? Is that what that cable Dahmer holds?
It feels yes, and it's pretty full here. I'd say maybe 3/4, maybe a tick higher, but the excitement of the fans that are here makes it feel like triple that, especially when you have a 3-0 lead and you know that you're on your way to your first Stanley Cup final in franchise history. So,
Yeah.
Pretty full crowd here, amplified by the circumstances.
Before we get off the Royals here, I mentioned Joe Ryan, the Twins starting pitcher today, who went 7 innings, gave up 1 run. He has pitched 8 times in his career against the Twins, against the Royals. He has a record of 6-0 and an ERA of 1.49 against Kansas City. So of all the pitchers in baseball, the Royals' biggest kryptonite for some reason is Joe Ryan of the Minnesota Twins. Good news is they won't have to see him the rest of the week.
There you go. Yeah, and again, 73 losses in history at the home of the Twins. That's second worst in baseball. So,
Yeah, I mean, they didn't do anything for 8 innings, and then they got the rally in the ninth. You talk about bouncing back. We sort of look ahead. Pitching probables are on the screen now for the next 3 days. You got Cole Reagans tomorrow, so you certainly feel good about your chances. You got Seth Lugo on Wednesday, so you feel good about your chances. And you have Brady Singer on Thursday, so you feel good about your chances, right? So in all 3 games, I would argue the Royals have the pitching advantage. And add to that, the one guy in the Twins rotation that the Royals will not see in this 4-game series is Pablo Lopez, same guy who shut him down on opening day 2023, same guy who shut him down on opening day 2024, and they miss him this time around. So that's probably a stroke of good luck, too.
Yeah, I think if you can tie this series, like you can say best case scenario, obviously go out with a win. We're talking a lot of momentum.
Yeah, no doubt. So I think that was the goal coming in, split on the road. That's still the goal. Obviously, a little harder now. You've got to win 2 out of 3. But with your ace on the mound tomorrow and Reagans, you certainly feel like you got a good shot. Okay, let's move on to sort of the weekend wrap. A lot going on around here, and some of it was good. Some of it was not so good. Let's start with Mizzou because the softball run was so cool going back to last week and the extra inning drama. And then they lose on Friday in the best of 3 in the Super Regional to Duke. Come back, dramatic victory at home on Saturday. And I know you were keeping an eye on yesterday's game. And for those who didn't see how they wound up losing the series, but boy, was it nip and tuck down the stretch.
Yeah, dramatic loss yesterday. This entire series has been wild, and I was really pulling for them because the College Softball World Series is just an incredible festivity. So it would have been really nice to have a local team down there to get to follow. But yeah, yesterday's game went into extra innings. Actually, really interesting. A Duke player hit a home run, and it looked like okay, this is kind of it. In the celebration, she nearly misses home base, so they're reviewing it. Maybe this doesn't even count. Ends up counting, and Duke ends up going on a roll. Mizzou gets close. They kind of rally back at the bottom of the inning, but just can't get it done. So heartbreaking to lose that. 1, to lose that series at all. They're this close to making the College World Series. And 2, to lose in such nail-biting fashion at home in Game 3. Just kind of a heartbreaking scene there with the campus talking the team afterwards. But still a really good season. A lot to be proud about, but that message is hard to swallow when you're that close, I can tell you that.
And the off season is awfully long when that happens, and you got to wait until next year to start it up again. And then a split soccer result, which we're getting kind of used to around these parts. Sporting KC, another loss, another close loss, but a loss nonetheless in Portland, 2-1. And the KC Current continue their unbeaten run to start the season, and this time they get a win, which they hadn't done in the last 3 games. So they go into Utah, get a victory there against a team they should beat, but still, you got to get it done on the pitch, and they did. So your thoughts on what we saw over the weekend?
Yeah, so we said on Friday, this was a game that the Current really had to get a win. They hadn't won, they had drawn, I think, as we said, 3 games in a row, so it's been about 3 or 4 weeks since the Kansas City had gotten 3 points. So that was huge because Utah was at the bottom of the table. So entering that one, we were saying, this can't be another draw. This certainly can't be a loss. This can't be a draw. You have to walk away with 3 points. And the Current were able to do that. So they're still unbeaten through 11 games. An absolutely phenomenal season for a team that did not even
Yeah, they flipped the switch last year, but it's tough to repeat that kind of history. We'll see. We'll see how that goes in the coming weeks. One more topic I wanted to touch on today, and it is one that probably a little closer to me than to you, just because I knew him and I worked with him a little bit. But Bill Walton passed away this morning. Bill Walton is one of the all-time great basketball players at any level. And a Hall of Famer, the Naismith Basketball Hall of Fame, the Pro Basketball Hall of Fame, but also a College Basketball Hall of Famer. He was a three-time consensus All-American at UCLA, a member of those incredible John Wooden teams that won all those championships back in the 60s and 70s. In 1972-73, he had a performance for the ages to cap a 30-0 season in the championship game that was in Missouri. It was in St. Louis, and he scored 44 points in that game to put a capper on another perfect season in UCLA national championship. So you're talking about a guy who was absolutely remarkable on the court, but I think what makes him so transcendent, and this is where you may have seen him over the years, is as a broadcaster, he became, I don't want to say a phenomenon, but there are a few broadcasters that have the kind of aura, the kind of must-see, like, oh, Walton's calling the game, I'm going to watch. I don't care about which teams are playing, but because he's on the call, I'm going to watch, because you never know what he's going to say. And he would talk, in between plays, the conversation would drift to the Grateful Dead, because he was a huge Deadhead. It would drift to his favorite restaurants around town, wherever they happen to be having the basketball game. Anything to do with life in general. You never know where Bill Walton was going to take the broadcast, and that's why it was appointment viewing. But he had such an incredible following. There were Twitter handles like about what Bill Walton just said, and you've made it when you've got those kind of ancillary handles. And so, incredible player, one-of-a-kind broadcaster, but such a genuine human being. He was the world's biggest champion for the Pac-12, and I think there is a very sad but appropriate symmetry with the death of the Pac-12 coinciding with the death of Bill Walton. The conference, essentially, its swan song was yesterday with the last game of the Pac-12 baseball tournament. That was the final broadcast ever for the Pac-12 network. And today, Bill Walton passes away as the face, or one of the faces, of the Pac-12 network doing college basketball for so many years. So I don't know if you ever heard him call a game. Again, a lot of this was regional, and he did, it was Pac-12, so a lot of West Coast. But if you ever got to experience the phenomenon that was Bill Walton calling a basketball game.
Yeah, well, I think he brought generations of basketball fans together. I mean, I grew up in youth basketball nerds, and I was always doing little research projects and things, and listening to any game I could find. And Bill Walton just reminded you that basketball is meant to be fun. He just brought like this unparalleled joy to the game that so many people got to witness, which is something that's pretty hard to do. So it's been nice seeing all the tributes today to him and some of the best moments of his broadcasting career. And but Scott, I know you knew him, and I can't imagine how painful that has to be. But I'm thankful that he was able to touch this world in the way he did, because he brought a lot of people a lot of joy in the time he had.
He did, and I think that's what made him such a special human being, is he touched everybody personally. And I got to chat with him a bunch of occasions prior to, I was calling Stanford basketball games for 10 years, and he obviously called a lot of games, Stanford games that I was broadcasting on radio. And he would always chat with the broadcasters. He would go, and this is what really separates him, and you can appreciate this as a D1 player. He would make it a point an hour and a half before tip-off to wander to both sides of the court while all the college players were shooting around, just warming up, getting ready for the game. And he would stop and talk to everybody. He would introduce himself. He would go to the walk-on at the end of the bench, a guy who he didn't know his name, and he'd say, "Hi, my name is Bill. What's your name?" And this is what he did, because he wanted to get to know these guys as people, and he would reference the guy at the end of the bench who had no chance of playing in the basketball game. But during the broadcast, he would talk about this guy and, well, he's an electrical engineering major and he's doing great things for his school and blah, blah, blah. So he was so personally involved and touched everybody in that personal way that I think that's what made him special. Again, add to the fact that he was a Hall of Fame player and this incredibly unique, fun broadcaster, but he was also such a great human. And I'll finish with this. I don't think a broadcast went by where Bill did not utter the words, "I am the luckiest man on earth." He just appreciated his lot in life. And this is a guy who was battling cancer for the last how many years of his life. Didn't matter. Always just a bastion of positivity. So it was super cool to know him just a little bit. I didn't know him well, but I knew him a little bit. And I do know the sports world is grieving today. It's a big loss. Anyway, on that cheery note, that'll wrap up our Monday stream. I'm going to let you go because I know you got hockey to get back to for the third period. Plus, it's so super loud in there that we're probably blowing the eardrums off of our viewers and listeners today. So good stuff. We'll get back to you tonight at 10, and we'll get the wrap up on the game.